Welcome back, weary travelers, to the Midnight Fire. Tonight, our embers glow with a story of pure desperation, a pact sealed in shadow, and a debt paid with something far more valuable than mere gold. So draw closer to the warmth, because we're about to journey to a place where heavy mist clings to ancient stones, and the whispers carried on the wind tell tales of a spectral guardian. We're going to Whisperwind Bridge to hear the chilling account of the bridgekeeper's debt. Whisperwind Bridge wasn't just a simple crossing, it was a legend etched in stone and perpetually shrouded in fog. Built centuries ago, its magnificent arches span the swift, dark waters of the River Corvus, serving as the sole connection between the desolate mining village of Blackwood and the wider, more prosperous world. The locals, when they dared to speak of it, did so with a hushed reverence. They claimed it was crafted by a solitary, nameless stonemason, a master of his craft who vanished without a trace the very day the final keystone was laid in place. But the true darker tale of the bridge began with its keeper. I don't mean the living men who collected tolls from travelers during the day. I mean the other one. The one who watched from the shadows, waiting. Our story truly begins in the biting, cruel winter of 1888, with a man named Elias Thorne. Elias was a miner, his body bowed and broken by years of relentless labor, his spirit utterly crushed by mounting, insurmountable debts. His beloved wife, Sarah, lay weak and fading from consumption, and his children cried with the gnawing pangs of hunger. The once rich mines that had sustained the village had run dry, and Blackwood, which had once thrived, now slowly starved. Elias was beyond desperate. He was a man with nothing left to lose. He had grown up hearing the old wives' tales, the fearful, hushed whispers about the bridge keeper. They spoke of a spectral figure, an entity that emerged from the fog only when true soul-deep desperation called out to it. They said he offered salvation, a way out of any trouble. But it always came at a price. One bitter new moon night, with Sarah's fever worsening and her breaths growing shallow, Elias finally made his decision. He made his way to Whisperwind. As he approached the stone structure, the air grew heavy, thick, and unnaturally still. The usual sounds of the forest at night, the crickets, the rustling leaves, the distant call of an owl, had all fallen silent. It was as if the world was holding its breath. As he reached the center arch, the highest point of the bridge, a figure began to materialize from the swirling, thick mist that rose from the river below. It was tall, unnervingly gaunt, and clad in what looked like ancient, dark clothing from a bygone era. And its eyes glowed with an unnerving, cold, and predatory light. It was the bridge keeper. Elias, his voice trembling so much he could barely form the words, poured out his pleas. He begged for his wife's health, for food to fill his children's empty stomachs, for salvation from the ruin that was about to consume them all. The bridge keeper listened, its silence more chilling than any scream, a heavy weight in the frigid air. Finally, it extended a long, pale hand, offering a small worn leather pouch. "All you desire shall be yours, Elias Thorne." Its voice was a dry, haunting whisper, like dead leaves rustling across a gravestone. "But remember, a debt is owed. And I always collect." Elias, blinded by a desperate surge of hope, seized the pouch without a second thought. He didn't ask what the debt was. He didn't care. He just knew he had to save his family. Elias's fortunes turned, seemingly overnight. Sarah's recovery was miraculous. The doctors couldn't explain it. Within a week, she was back on her feet, color returned to her cheeks. A new unbelievably rich seam of silver ore was discovered deep within Elias's supposedly barren mine. His family prospered beyond his wildest dreams. His children grew strong and healthy, their laughter filling the house that was once silent with sorrow. But with every blessing, a dark, creeping shadow grew in Elias's heart. A paranoia took root. He never again crossed Whisperwind Bridge without an involuntary shiver running down his spine. He would hear faint whispers on the wind when no one was near, the phantom scraping of ancient chains dragging on stone. The bridge keeper's words echoed relentlessly in his mind, "A debt is owed." He began to hoard his newfound wealth, to accumulate riches, believing that if he just had enough gold, enough jewels, enough property, he could pay off whatever the spectral figure demanded when it eventually came to collect. 10 years passed. A full decade. Elias was now a wealthy, respected man, the most powerful figure in the revived village of Blackwood. He had almost managed to forget the chilling pact he'd made on that misty bridge. Almost. One moonless night, the darkest he had seen in years, he was returning home late in his fine carriage. As the horse's hooves rattled over the familiar stones of Whisperwind Bridge, the mist rolled in, thicker than he had ever seen it. The silence was absolute, a suffocating blanket. Then, a spectral hand, cold as the grave, appeared and rested on his shoulder. Elias froze, his blood turning to ice, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. The bridge keeper stood before him, its form clearer now, more solid, its glowing eyes fixed on his with an unnerving intensity. "The debt, Elias Thorne," it whispered, its voice now colder, sharper, like shattering ice. "It is time to collect." Elias, trembling uncontrollably, fumbled in his coat, offering fistfuls of jewels, stacks of gold coins, the deeds to all his mines and properties. The bridge keeper merely shook its head, a slow, deliberate, and final movement. "You offered your life, Elias Thorne, in exchange for your family's well-being. Not your wealth. What is truly owed, is truly yours." Elias tried to run, to scramble away, but his feet were fused to the stone of the bridge, as if they had become part of it. He felt an icy grip, not on his body, but on his very soul, on his essence. The bridge keeper began to pull, slowly, inexorably. Elias cried out, a desperate, terrified sound that was instantly swallowed by the dense, silent mist. As he was drawn closer, closer to that terrible, glowing gaze, he saw his own reflection in the bridge keeper's eyes. But it wasn't the face of the prosperous man he was. It was a face, haggard and aged, filled with an eternity of sorrow, a face that was now mirroring the gaunt, spectral features of the keeper itself. And in that horrifying moment, he finally understood. The debt wasn't a material payment. It was a service. A succession. A replacement. Elias Thorne was never seen again. His family grieved, his children grew old, never understanding his sudden and complete disappearance. But the locals, the old families who still dared to cross Whisperwind Bridge on moonless nights, sometimes speak of a faint, new figure they glimpsed through the fog. A figure standing a lonely sentinel at the center arch, its eyes glowing with a cold, sad light, its ancient clothes swaying in a phantom breeze. Another bridge keeper, eternally bound to his post. For the debt is always paid, and the guardian of Whisperwind Bridge always watches. So the next time you find yourself passing an old, forgotten bridge in the dead of night, remember Elias Thorne. Remember that some bargains are far too steep, and some debts are collected in ways you could never possibly imagine. And some bridges are best left uncrossed. Until next time, keep your fire bright and your wits about you, but always remember, here at the Midnight Fire, every story casts a shadow. Thanks for listening.